Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine, CEO of Performance Works International. This podcast is grounded in business, digital, workforce and leadership transformation for our times. My aim is to initiate conversations with experts, leaders, professionals who've got a story to tell and who we can all learn from. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel or simply go to performanceworks.global to access all the episodes to date. I'm sure you'll find something of interest. Hello and welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast. In this episode, we get under the skin of how the broader, more diverse workforce is being supported through evolved HR strategies and actions. With me to discuss this is a global HR pro of over 20 years, Alexander Matianis, who's partnered with boards and CEOs to craft strategies that accelerate business and talent growth. Alexander is a true student of business and human capital management, holding an MSc in Human Resources Management and Development, an MBA in Finance, and a Bachelor of Marketing. He's also a Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development and currently the Global HRD for International SOS Medical Services business line. International SOS is the world's leading medical and travel security services company with an employee base of over 12,000 operating across 80 countries and servicing over 70% of the Fortune 500 companies. We talk about the transformational landscape HR leaders and professionals are dealing with and how one key aspect of this should not be overlooked, the broadening cross-generational, diverse mix of distributed talent in our organisations. The first time in history, in fact, we've got 5 generations working side by side. Alexander helps us get into the detail, pulling on his experience across global HR roles in over 5 regions and multiple industry sectors. Well, thanks very much for joining me, Alexander. I'd love you to introduce yourself, your journey in HR, and tell us something about yourself that maybe not many people know.
Well, thanks, Jeremy, for having me in the podcast. And also congratulations for your Inner CEO book that you released. It's quite amazing to see the passion resonating on the leadership of topic through the book. And I would encourage anybody to take the book because there's a lot of insights, interesting insights that you're sharing. So for myself, my name is Alexander Matianis. I've been in the HR field for 25 years now. My journey, I was born in Canada, grew up in Greece, studied in the UK, started my career and family in the Middle East, where I stayed there for about 18 years. I'm currently living in Asia, based out of Singapore, working with International SOS as the global head of HR for medical services business line. We support about 8,000 staff that are based in 1,000 locations, 80 countries, supporting our clients with security and health solutions to keep them and their staff healthy and safe. A bit of my background, I have experience working in emerging markets, greenfield startups, M&A integration, IPO, and driving P&L enablement. I've been quite lucky in supporting organizations through exponential growth in the engineering, event management, technology, and health and security industries. Key highlights from my career: delivering the opening and closing ceremonies for the 2000 Asian Games, where I worked with David Atkins. He was the creative director for the Sydney Olympics. He was tasked to do the opening and closing ceremonies in Qatar for the Asian Games. Very tactical HR. We scaled up from 30 to 1,000 people. Then moving into telecoms, working with Qatar Telecom. At the time, they were a monopoly. There were 2,000 employees, and within 12 months of working with them, expanded to 17,000 employees, a 10 billion company, and I was involved in setting up the group HR function and the headquarters globally. So that was quite a fulfilling role. And now working with International SOS, and in the past 2 years, supporting our global clients and combating COVID pandemic and navigating through the complexities of COVID has been quite rewarding. So my passion is about building talent ecosystems that nurture a learning culture, as well as, providing business leaders with people instruments to combat competitive and market challenges.
Great. Thank you so much. Wow. Is there anything you've not done, Alexander? I mean, really, it's incredible. A true global citizen and a business leader, a business pro, leadership expert, human capital professional courses you are now. I had no idea about that, about the Asia Games as well. The opening and closing ceremony is incredible. And the great news is, after this, Alexander, you can tell your kids that you're on Spotify. That'd be great, won't it? Or Apple, depending on what they've got. Fantastic. I think actually I'm going to come to you as a leadership expert first and bring in and weave that into the human capital side. And I'd really like to understand from you what your observations are concerning current leadership, people and organizational trends as we've entered the new normal. We've come out of the pandemic. We've got uncertainty and unpredictability ahead, et cetera, et cetera. Thoughts?
I think for me as an HR professional, and I guess from my lens, I think what resonates quite strongly is the multi-generational workplace that we have in place. It's the first time in humanity that we have 5 working generations employed in the workplace. We have the baby boomers that are self-taught leaders coming out from the Second World War, where they might have lost their families. They came in and established themselves in the market, but also the Generation X, where they experienced a glass ceiling because the baby boomers dominated the leadership arena. But also, I think what is very clear, at least from my perspective, is that the next generation has a very consultative leadership style, which can assist in bridging the gaps between the baby boomers and the millenniums and the Ys and the Zs. And when we look at the millenniums, the Ys and the Zs, there's access to, they've had access to unlimited just-in-time information, easier access to goods and services, and travel when compared to the other generations. The also quite interesting is the interest versus status-based working motivators. When we look at baby booms and next generation, they are status-driven, more influenced by traditional management structures, and they're more culturally rooted. They have a more culturally rooted entity, where the Ys and the Zs are driven and inspired by interest and purpose. So if we were to do a bit of an experiment where we take 1,000 baby boom and next generation, from 20 countries, say 50 people from each country, all of them speaking quite well English, and we randomly put them in an open space and see how they interact, what we most probably will see is they will start clustering based on ethnic and cultural background. But if we do the same for the millenniums, the Ys, and the Zs, what we probably see is that they will cluster around interest based on, music, games, fashion. And that also resonates in organizations. So as HR professionals, we need to really pay attention to that and make sure that what we provide from HR solutions cater to different generational differences that exist. From a milestone versus on-the-fly recognition, where baby booms and X have this embedded notion that you must work long and hard to achieve, assess performance over time, reward based on key milestones, whereas the millenniums, the Ys, and the Zs are driven more and motivated by instant gratification and reward. And if I take an example of myself when I was growing up, we would go to the arcades and play Street Fighter, where it took us 2 weeks to finish one stage. And I look at my son, in 10 minutes, he's, accumulated thousands of points and he's on, level 20. So all these are part of the diverse generational workforce and impacting, how we should drive, HR practices. And I can share a little bit more on that as well, Jeremy.
Yeah, gosh, that takes me back. Street Fighter in the arcades. Wow, that really does. Gosh, I remember that too. You're so right, actually, to pull out that multi-generational piece, because it's at one level actually a very key leadership imperative for leaders to be aware of, as much as it is in the purview of the human capital professionals, as it was. And particularly with the needs, you're right, this instant gratification of the Ys, the Zs, they're looking for fulfillment, perhaps over career, short-term fulfillment, and then who knows what they'll do? We don't know. Where, I think the rest of us still locked in that traditional mentality. I think it's well said around that. And I'd like to stay with that, therefore, and go deeper into it, because you clearly got some great insights around this. So if we take that cross-generational workforce mix and we consider, what do you think an ideal world look like considering that? And when you add in the new working models that we've got, the way we need to lead, engage, manage, mobilize our people, how we perhaps differently recognize and reward our workforce for the years ahead.
I think what we need to do is have an open dialogue about it and recognize the differences. And it's about leveraging generational dynamics so we can build that future leadership capability. When we look, as the baby boomers are exiting the workplace, that will create a leadership knowledge-based vacuum. I think the X generation can bridge that vacuum with their consultative approach, where they start supporting the millenniums, the Ys and the Zs, as they're entering the leadership arena. And through mentoring and coaching, build that capability, support them to build that capability, and make sure that, we're setting them up for success. So these are some approaches. I think that, it is having that active dialogue and seeing how best we position, HR practices to enhance and deliver on the generational demands in the workplace.
Yeah, you describe actually a lot of what the growth mindset's around there, this coaching culture, mentoring, being supportive, open communications across all the levels, open dialogues that need to happen. Do you have any examples that you can give us in terms of those organizations, even not necessarily the one that you're in right now, even, or that one, those making progress, versus those perhaps sticking with what they've always done and what they're comfortable with?
I think performance management is a good example where acknowledging the differences within the organization and how performance is viewed, following the more milestone approach, and opening that to the organization. I think it's when you look at, for example, call centers, where you have a younger generation coming in and allowing that instant gratification on the fly, and making sure that we, building that infrastructure to support that approach and performance. So I think a more organic approach, and allowing a customized solutions that it's not a blanket approach, but more a targeted approach. And again, also as we view workplace as organic rather than flexible, as we're coming out of the pandemic, we hear a lot about, the flexible, the hybrid. I think it's becoming, I think we need to step back and look at it as being organic, which is multidimensional, and there's an inclusive approach when we look at it from a flexible, it's more of an extension. It becomes more of a policy, whereas we accept that, we look at the workplace as organic and we accept what makes sense for a given period of time, adjust policy approach and provide all the support we need from all people practices to foster that organic approach to organization.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there around performance management and that movement to a more organic performance support in a way and rethinking what that actually means. So I guess the $64,000 question for you, Alexander, is getting to the how. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot, I know here, but you've got great experience from all sides of this as well. So from your perspective, how can HR and OD professionals design and lead the workforce of the future in recognition of the things that you've said, like the cross-generational mix, the diversity that comes with that, its breadth, and most importantly, its potential?
Yeah, and I think there's a few things as HR professionals is more how we position ourselves. It's more partnering closer to the business to understand what the dynamics are, driving a proactive approach, looking at talent and people analytics. There's a lot of data there that can start showing trends and putting the dots together through these analytics. It's also organizational design and having fluidity and having an organic structure, because we live in a VUCA world. If we look just a few years ago prior COVID, where the world is a very different place post-COVID and the geopolitical challenges that we're facing. And it's all about communicating. We have to have a clear, consistent, and repetitive message. And constantly we are assessing organizational values to ensure they're relevant for today. And taking under consideration also the multiple complexities that a multiple generational workforce has. It's about engaging, it's about role modeling and showcasing individuals and championing them. So we set the pace and the example into the organization. And it's all about talent, having talent discussions, deep diving into the employee population to see, who's our future leaders, and not being afraid to have that open dialogue and building that pipeline to ensure business continuity from a human capital perspective. And it's all about learning as well. It's about keeping people relevant to roles and making sure that the workforce has skills for today and for tomorrow. And finally, it's about policy. It's not about having a standardized approach, but more having a customized approach and looking at those unique differences, especially from a generational perspective, as what we highlighted before.
Well, some really important things that you mentioned coming out here: engaging the organization, role modeling the types of behaviors and attributes that we would like to see, championing your people and those future leaders front and center. And I like that last piece that you said, having that kind of customized, more flexible policy that moves with these times. You're so right. We're in the VUCA world. And we can add a D onto that now as well and kind of add that word distributed or dispersed, whatever you want to call it, because it adds a level of complexity. But keeping people relevant to those moving roles is a really key task, as you said. And that clear, consistent, repetitive communication of messaging, as you point out, is highly important. I'd just like to ask you one supplementary question on this, Alexander, because you mentioned data and analytics, and my ears pricked up, because we are in the era of artificial intelligence, of huge amounts of data that can be used almost immediately to drive decisions or thinking and so on. What is the importance, in your view, of data and data analytics to human capital professionals?
I think with data, there's multiple latitudes of data when we look at people data or talent analytics, people and talent analytics, looking at where we have gaps in the organization from a talent perspective, but also looking at the raw data to start mapping out trends. And that can help the organization expedite decisions and support the business as they're navigating through the complexities of the markets. For example, when we were doing talent reviews and looking at talent analytics, we noticed that about 50% in one of the organizations that I was working for, we didn't have successors in place for our top critical roles, which that indicate that we have business continuity risk. And then you open up to the dialogue of how do we cover that gap, and where and how do we upskill our employee base to be able to shorten that gap and make sure that we have the pipeline in place to cover from a business continuity perspective.
Oh, great stuff. And it is the era of speed, isn't it? And I know sometimes we have to slow down to speed up, but if you can expedite that kind of decision making at a human level by the use of data, then that has to be something that leaders, human capital professionals, finance professionals, marketing professionals, we all need to get on board with quicker. So thank you very much for diverting off to that for me, a very important point. And for those tuning in that are listening to what you're saying, that these messages that you're giving us are resonating strongly, what would be your top tips for making progress for them so that we can get some next steps out of this?
I think three things for me. I think it's from a leadership perspective, leaders set the weather rather than the direction. It's not just giving the direction, it's looking at how the organization will perceive that direction and making sure that you have the right messaging and bringing people on board. It's about having that organic workplace rather than flexible hybrid, as what we discussed before. And it's also reinvent and innovate. And first looking at how do we reinvent, because that will bring us faster to where we want to go, utilizing what we already have, and then innovating on top of that to drive a lot of the people initiatives that are critical to the organization. So these are the key top tips that I would put forward.
Yeah, I love the way that you talk about that leaders set the weather, not the direction. I really get that. And I really understand the point. Fantastic. And Alexandra, I'd just like to say thank you so much for joining me for this. And I'm sure that there are many people who are listening or watching this would love to get in touch with you, continue the discussion. How do they do that? Quite easily through LinkedIn. They can find me and connect with me, and we can continue the dialogue through that means. Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your career, your insights, and some of those things that are really going to make the success out of our workforces and organizations for the years ahead. Much appreciated. Thank you. Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it. Cheers. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel or simply go to performanceworks.global to access all the episodes to date. We'll see you next time.